who joins us now on the Folsom Lake Ford Hotline, Folsom Lake Honda Hotline, Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. As Simone said during the break, the voice, the legend of the Sacramento Kings, Gary Gerould, the G-Man, joins us now. How are you this afternoon, Mr. Gerould?
I am more than tolerable now that I've heard Al Giroux coming out of the break. That's awesome. As soon as I heard Al Giroux, I said, well, I know who put somebody up to that.
Jay came in. He said, what's going to make your dad smile?
And he knew exactly what to give you, G-Man.
Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, you guys, if I've learned anything over the last 2.5 hours, you guys are just having too much fun.
That's what we do here. I tell all. I've had rotating co-hosts, G-Man. The first thing I've said to all of them is we're just here to have fun. That's the number one objective here on the afternoon show. The Kings went into the offseason with an objective to build on what they did last year, the big leap that they took last year. And they did that by mostly investing in their own, that salary cap money that they freed up. They brought back Domas on the extension. They brought back HB and spent it on the players that they already had here. What did you think of that path, Gary?
I liked it. I mean, I have a lot of trust in Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox. I love the Vizenchoff acquisition. I've been talking a lot with over this last season, particularly with Wes, about this man and what he has brought to the Greek, the teams that he was playing on in Greece and Euro Cup and one thing or another. And I mean, Wes was all but slobbering all over himself. I mean, he just was so infatuated. And then when I started hearing about the Kings sending not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 different entourages to Europe to see him play in tournament competition, to woo him, I'm thinking, man, they are really going after this guy hard, and I like it. And so there's a lot to like. And then there's, of course, and you guys alluded to it a bit earlier, everybody tries to get better during the off season. And we've seen once again this year, tremendous amount of change in personnel. And as we all know, life in the Western Conference is not easy. And the Kings checked so many boxes last year and did things that none of us realistically expected. And I'm anxious to see how, now that this foundation has been built, how do you improve on it? And, can you remain competitive, and can you continue to, you're not going to sneak up on anybody. We know that. So there's so many things and so many intriguing storylines. But in answer to your basic question is, I like the fact that they didn't just make changes for making changes' sake. And it'll be interesting to see, how all these things begin to play out. And I know Bobby mentioned earlier too that, the summer's not over yet. I mean, who knows what can transpire between now and the start of training camp in late September.
Yeah. If you could, how would you describe what Harrison Barnes means to the team? And as far as, not on the court necessarily, but the intangibles he brings?
I think if you talk to anybody in the organization who is around him on a regular basis, you'll hear the same story. Pro. First guy in to work out, last guy to leave. He doesn't, his highs aren't real high, his lows aren't real low. He's just rock solid. And, he's got 11 years of experience now in the NBA. He's won an NBA championship. He's been through the business of being traded. He knows what that's like. He brings stability. And, yeah, he may not have the flash, but he's a guy that just, who do you turn to? You need a post-up situation, and Harrison can do it. You need a defensive stop. Harrison can do it. You need somebody to attack the basket. Harrison can do it. He can knock down the three. There's just not a lot of things that he can't do. And he does it without a lot of flash and pizzazz, but he's just so steady. And I think there's great value in that. And I, for one, am very happy that he is still on the Kings roster.
Yeah, we've seen obviously some chemistry that didn't work in the past here, and that's not stating anything overly negative when you didn't make the playoffs for 16 years in a row. And then we saw what what happened last year. What was the major difference in the chemistry and in your experience? What makes good chemistry from bad chemistry?
Starts with Mike Brown, in my opinion, Bobby. And I really amazed at what he was able to accomplish, because it was just over a year ago, of course, that he made his first public appearance in Sacramento. And I've told this story on multiple occasions, how in that very first public gathering, they had the media there, they had members of the organization, there were a handful of players on site, including De'Aaron Fox. And Mike Brown had various observations, and he's talking, and we're really becoming familiar with him for a first time. Sure, we knew about him coaching and getting the Cavaliers to the finals. We knew about his years coaching Kobe with the LA Lakers. We knew about his years with Steve Kerr and the great mix of talent that the Warriors have had in their championship success. But to hear Mike Brown for the first time really spelling out core issues, making the observation, I look at this organization and I don't see soul. You've got to have soul. You've got to have collective soul. You've got to have everybody pulling on the same rope. And he went on to explain, I'm not talking about just basketball operations. I'm not talking about the players roster. I'm not just talking about the medical training staff. I'm talking about the people who market the team, the people who sell the tickets, everybody in the front office. Everybody has to have this sense of soul, and we all win together and we lose together. And it kind of started from that. And then he started talking about coaching teams hard. And he talked about having, where you've got to improve defensively. And I loved it. And I've mentioned this multiple times. Fox is overstanding against the wall to my right. And he says, Foxy and I we go back to his high school days in Texas. And right away you see Fox kind of roll his eyes and you wonder, okay, what's coming? And he said, we all know about De'Aaron Fox. We know about his explosiveness and his quickness on the floor, and he can get end to end as quick as anybody in the NBA. But I also know that he can be a heck of a good defender, and he's going to become a good defender in this organization. And so here's your new head coach. The first day he's talking with the media in front of the organization and some of the players, and he's basically challenging De'Aaron Fox in public the first time, in Sacramento. And I thought, man, this is pretty cool, because I absolutely agree. But then I also was thinking, how many times have we heard on the coaching merry-go-round that we've seen in Sacramento? Right. How many times have we heard, guys spelling out their strategy and their beliefs in one thing or another? But what Mike Brown did in establishing his staff, you very quickly began to find out that these people genuinely liked each other. There was virtually a coach working with almost every player throughout last summer. From early August last summer on, the bulk of the roster was in Sacramento, working out on a daily basis. They were doing things collectively as a group. They'd go to Napa, have dinner with Sabonis and his family. They went to the Warriors for 3 days, I was told. I had no inkling that this happened. And they had unstructured, games between the Warriors and the Kings leading up to training camp. And you see that there's this camaraderie building. There's this team believing. And so when you look a year later at what transpired, the 18-game improvement, the first time in the playoffs in 17 years, the All-Stars and Fox and Sabonis, the All-NBA third-team selections, the Clutch Player of the Year, the number one rebounding player of the year, the first time ever a Coach of the Year by unanimous vote, Executive of the Year. So much improvement. You say, how did they manage to do all of that? Well, they were healthy, and that was a big, big part of it. But what a great springboard for this second season. And now you can't wait to see. How is it going to match up? How much better are the Lakers going to be? How much better are the San Antonio Spurs going to be? You can say that about everybody in the Western Conference. So I'm prattling it more than I meant to, but it was so revitalizing to everybody, including this old soul, to see this team have that kind of success.
You're talking with the G-Man, Gary Gerould, voice of your Sacramento Kings here on Sactown Sports. You mentioned a springboard into the second year of this thing. under Mike Brown. I think the guy who they're expecting to make the biggest jump off that springboard is Keegan Murray, who put on a show out in the at the Cali Classic out at the Golden One Center. How much is a realistic leap to expect from Keegan Murray in year number 2 here, do you think, Gary?
Sky's the limit. I know it's a cliche, but I mean, this kid has got so much talent, and he's been working as probably most.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jerry.
He's been working with De'Aaron Fox on a daily basis this summer, and I was in the training facility before the California Classic, and I was watching one of the practice sessions, and I went over to just say hello to Keegan, and we ended up talking a little golf for a few minutes, and I'm thinking to myself, Keegan Murray has suddenly become so much more outgoing. He was almost a chatty Cathy. And I couldn't believe it, and I loved it. And then you talk to more people, and they say De'Aaron is just he's bringing him out. He's encouraging him to be more outgoing. And as we all we joked last year about Keegan being almost expressionless. You'd see the subtle smiles from different times. And then to see him now and those 2 games in the California Classic, and Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Kings were down 6-0 in one of those first games, and Keegan suddenly finds a hole from midcourt, and he just targets the basket, comes right down the gut, thunder slam, and the place goes crazy. And I'm thinking, if he can do this, if he can create off the dribble on a more regular basis, we're going to see a whole new phase of Keegan Murray. And I know Bobby brought up the stat earlier in the show about almost 97% of his shots that he made last year were assisted baskets. So the Kings, all through late last season, encouraging him to be more vocal, encouraging him to go strong to the basket, to be aggressive. Well, we saw that in the 2 games he played in Summer League, and I loved it. And I think all Kings fans loved it as well.
One thing I always come back to, and we're talking with, and this is always weird to say from the co-host position, but we're talking with my dad, Gary Gerould on Sactown Sports 1140. But let's go back a little bit, to before the Sacramento Kings were here. And I know that's a long time back because they came in 1985. But I remember, and I know you remember, I mean, what was life like in Sacramento before the Sacramento Kings were here and before we had NBA basketball?
Well, if you were a basketball fan, it was pretty slim pickings. And we went to a lot of high school games. Particularly, we became good friends with Spider Thomas, who was then the coach of the Kennedy Cougars. And they had a fellow by the name of Ernest Lee, who was just off the charts good. And may his soul rest in forever peace. But he was a delight to watch. And we were excited about the possible prospects beyond high school for Ernest Lee. And there were the March of Dimes tournaments.
Yes.
And there were different tournaments like that Bobby and I, we'd go to on a regular basis. And we'd watch these folks. And then suddenly here comes this possibility of the Kings coming to Sacramento in the mid-'80s. And no professional sports franchises at that time. And life really changed dramatically. But it was you were starved for. I mean, I'm trying to remember the name, Bobby, and you would know the name of the league. The guys that played a season at the Memorial Auditorium.
Oh, yeah, the Sacramento Prospectors. Yes. Wasn't like the Western Basket. I don't even remember. I'd have to look it up. But, yeah, George Putnam and those guys. Yeah.
Yep. And you know how exciting that was. And it was just because it was in a different venue. It was an aging venue, but you could still put 3,500 to 4,000 people in there to watch basketball. But we were starved for it. And, you can only listen to Bill King in those days for so long and the Warriors' success. And boy, did I love to listen to Bill King. What a tremendous, not only basketball announcer. I mean, he could read the yellow pages and he'd have the hair on your arm standing up.
He was the greatest. Yeah.
He was amazing. Just amazing.
That's really going back. And that kind of gives you a feel for it, Ramie. I mean, we were so starved for professional basketball or professional anything here.
Sure.
And you had Bill King. I believe at the time he was the voice of the Oakland A's, the Oakland Raiders, and the Golden State Warriors all simultaneously. I don't know how you pull that off.
Yeah, did he clone himself? How did he do that?
Right. I'm sure they had some fill-ins here and there, but yeah, he was the guy. And it was fantastic. And I mean, we were so starved. I don't even know if you've been around Sacramento long enough to have heard of something called the Pig Bowl.
I have not heard of the Pig Bowl.
So the Pig Bowl was a football game that they would have at Hughes Stadium between Sac City Police and the Sac County Sheriffs. And they would sell out Hughes Stadium, which is what? What's Hughes Stadium, Dad? 16?
Well, it was, the crowds ran as high as $22,000. I mean, $22,000 people.
Wow.
And they just packed the place, and it was huge. I mean, and that speaks exactly to how much Sacramento wanted sports entertainment. You got guys that practiced, for 3 weeks or so ahead of that time, who were law enforcement officers, and both the sheriff's department and the police department. And there were some good former college athletes who sparkled in that setting, but people just lapped it up. It was a happening. It was a gathering. It was huge. Yeah.
Well, not only did they get a basketball team, they got a great announcer in Gary Gerould, and I can't wait, G-Man, till the Kings are back on the court and you're back on these airwaves doing the games. A pleasure, as always, to get a few minutes of your time, sir.
Thank you, Ramie. Thank you, Bobby. You guys, Jay, Simone, all of you, you're having a lot of fun. I love it, and just keep doing that thing, and we can't wait. I mean, and it'll be here before you know it. What's today, July 18th?
Yes, sir.
Roughly 2 months away, and we'll be going to training camp and starting the whole process.
Right around the corner, G-Man. Let's talk again soon, my man.
You bet.
And he joins us on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. I know he's your dad, so you know this, but just every time I talk to that man, I get the warmest feelings from him. He just seems like the nicest, most genuine man.
Yeah, he is genuinely a good dude and a good soul, and I'm very blessed to have a father, who is like that and who has integrity and is grounded. I've never had to apologize or be embarrassed for anything my dad's ever done. And I know there's a lot of kids who can't say that.
I can't say that. I have a great dad. I've had to apologize for him before, though. Right after this, you'll hear some things, Bobby, that make you go, he said